Good morning, happy Monday. Jackie Broman here for Join Jackie Monday Mornings. It's been a couple of weeks, sorry. Last week was a long weekend on the Monday, so I wasn't here, but the Monday before was just flat out, so I didn't come to you, sorry. If you do want me to go back and do that topic, let me know. It was about the different business structures that you can have. But today we're talking about the financial settlement process, and this is mainly in respect of a separation. So how do you do a financial separation and what that process is. So I suppose there's a number of things that you can do. The financial process is separate from divorce. So you do not need to have a divorce to do your financial separation. You can do your financial separation before or after a divorce. You do need to do it within 12 months of divorcing. So just so you know that around the financial separation. So when you come to an agreement about how you want to do your financial separation, you can either have a binding or a non-binding arrangement. So if you come to an agreement and you really trust each other and you're going to move on, and I believe that it's nearly 50% of couples when they separate do not need lawyers' intervention, and they're able to deal with their financial settlement and off they go separately and there's no repercussions, then that's fine. But understand that if you don't have a binding agreement and that trust erodes, or someone else new comes into the picture and you want to prevent someone from having a double dip, from coming back and saying, well, that wasn't enough, you can do a binding agreement so that it's actually final. And you can do a binding agreement either in or out of court. So if you want to go through the court, you don't actually have to go, you just submit what your agreement is, and the court can basically rubber stamp it for you, which is going through the process of consent orders. Now the court does apply a fair and equitable test, so you do have to make sure that your agreement actually is fair, and then if the court seals that, then it is binding. The other way you can go through a binding agreement is to actually do what's called a binding financial agreement under the Family Law Act. For those who might want to do a binding financial agreement prior to a relationship, that's a prenup. But you can also do these during a relationship if things change during, and you can do them after a separation as well. So a binding financial agreement doesn't have to go through the court, so it is not subject to that fair and equitable test. So if your agreement is something that you want to agree to and get over the line, but it's not exactly fair and equitable, but you're okay with that, you should go down the path of a binding financial agreement. So those are sort of your options. You can reach an agreement with each other and either go for binding or non-binding. If you want to have a binding, you can do in court or out of court. So that's the way of actually formalising it. How to actually reach the agreement is often a more difficult process, and how to know whether it's fair or not. So you can go back and have a look at a video I've done a couple of times over the years about the 4-step financial process. So the court applies a 4-step process to test whether a financial separation is fair and equitable. So you can apply that for yourself. There are other tools that you could use. For example, there is an AI tool online called Amica, as in amicable, Amica. So you respectively put in all your information and the robot tells you what's fair and equitable, so you can do that. You could also have a mediation. So if you're struggling to negotiate and know what's fair, head along to a mediator. So a mediator can be a far cheaper and quicker option than trying to negotiate through lawyers. Lawyers trying to negotiate in writing because they usually don't do it, they do it through letters. can still take months of backwards and forwards, and you might be looking at between $2,000 and $5,000 each to do that process. Whereas if you go along to mediation, you can usually get into a mediator within a month. You do it in a half day or a full day process, and you've got your agreement and it's done. So there are lots of private mediators around. If there are children involved, you should do what's called, you should find a family dispute practitioner, and we can put you in touch with one of those. They're specially accredited mediators. But if you don't have children involved, you can use an ordinary mediator that can guide you through the process. So there's, again, plenty of private mediators around. If you don't want to use a mediator that is also a lawyer, you can find a whole lot of registered mediators at the Mediation Institute. If you want to use a mediator that's also a lawyer, you can find a list of mediators at the Law Institute. But again, if you want to reach out, we can get you in touch with local private mediators. And there is another one that does mediations online. Again, you can get into that within a month. It's flexible because it's online. You don't have to be in the same room with the person. It is called Interact Support, and that's online. They do a full day or a half day mediation as well. And as I said, can be quicker and cheaper because you can usually get into your mediation within a month, and then you've got your agreement done and dusted instead of going backwards and forwards through lawyers for potentially months. So try that first, and then, as I say, you've got your agreement. You can either leave it at that as a non-binding, or you can turn it into a binding agreement. So then you'd bring it to a lawyer and you'd either use a court process or a non-out-of-court process. So I think that that's probably enough of an explanation to start with. Of course, you can reach out and ask more questions of me if you need to. There's also hundreds of videos on our video tab on Facebook, so you can go back and have a look at divorce versus separation is a good one to look for, and also the 4-step financial process is another good one to have a look at. Otherwise, by all means, direct message us, or our website is on our Facebook page. So if you go there, it does have our individual email addresses for everyone on there. So you're quite welcome to email us and ask us a question there as well. If there is any topic that you want me to cover, let me know. If this was useful for someone that you know, please tag them in the comments, or you can share it with them privately via Messenger if it is something that they don't want publicly known about. Otherwise, I'll be back again next Monday. Thanks very much. I hope you have a great week. I'll catch you then.